What's up, guys? Back with another video. I get a lot of questions on social media and my YouTube channel. What are my wheel and tire specs? And I just don't have time to comment and reply to every single one of them. But I'm currently running Volk CE28s. They are 19 by 9.5 in the front and 19 by 10.5 in the rear. Okay, as you can see, they are both 22 offsets. The 10.5 22, it's a lot more concave in the back than the 9.5 22, which you can see here. So in terms of fitment, it fits pretty well. The back pokes a lot more than the front. It's actually just quite flush with the front fender, but the rear, it pokes out about like an inch. So before I get into tire size, the reason why our cars tend to have this weird like this weird suspension fitment thing. So once you lower the car, the rear, if you notice, a lot of you guys have ISFs, the rear is already kind of lower than the front, and that it comes like that from factory, which is very weird, but whatever the hell. Once you lower the car, usually we like to lower the car and make it even, right? So when I lowered the car, I made sure there was about a finger gap in the front and back. So after that, I did an alignment, and the rear is actually like -1 degree camber, and the front is like -2 degree camber, or 2.5. So I'm like, what the fuck is going on? But I figured because from factory the car is slightly already lowered in the back, and the suspension is designed to have that -1 degree of camber, so you don't lose traction in your tires, whereas the front was lifted up significantly more than the rear to compensate for the weight of the engine. So because we lowered the front end with the factory arms, naturally the suspension would camber in, whereas the rear, which I did put coils on, but the rear barely dropped a little bit, so it still holds its -1 degree of camber. So I have -1.2 or something like that in the back of camber, and the front is like -2.2 of camber, which is why it's flush with my fender in the front, but it's poking like hell in the back. So the only way to correct this is to get a camber kit in the rear and match it up to -2.2 or whatever with the front. You will have perfect camber front and rear in terms of aesthetics, and it won't poke as bad. It'll be flush with the fender in terms of looking down at it, right? So but the only bad thing is you lose, a little bit more of tire traction, which you don't want to in a high performance sports car. So I settled with just leaving the factory upper control arms and lower control arms. I didn't get a camber kit for it. So to compensate for that, that's what you're wondering, to compensate, how the hell will I be able to fit these wheels? So people like to run like 19 by 8.5, 19 by 9.5, or 19 by 9, 19 by 10 with like a 35 or 40 offset, which will fit better on the car, but it'll sit further in. So which is nice, but you're limited to certain wheels and things like that. So with that, you can run a fatter tire, but in my case, I wanted to keep the 9.5, 10.5, 22, which is a very common tire size in the Volk lineup. So for me to make a 10.5 fit the rear, I had to run a 255/35, okay, which I think is a factory tire size as well. So you can use your factory tires and be fine. Problem is, you need to roll your fenders. You need to roll it flat and flare it slightly. Like mine's is barely flared because I didn't want that. I want it to be as OEM as possible. But the 255 in the rear fit nicely, but it's chopping up like crazy. You see right there? So I rubbed like crazy right here on the tab, but I don't want to do any grinding on my fender tab, because if that shit gives out, then the whole rear bumper will fall on on the sides, and I don't want that. So 255/35 on a 10.5 will fit nicely with the finger gap in terms of drop, but it will rub unless you want to modify it. Or you can run a 245/35 and not have as bad as a rubbing issue, but then you lose the wideness of the tire. So I still brake traction easy with 255, but that's just my opinion. This is the way I fit a 10.5 in the back of the ISF. Now for the front, it's a little easier. Factory wheels on the 8, the 19x8, it has a 225/40 tire, but I have a 245/40 tire. So it's a 245 instead of a 225, and it has a mild stretch on it. See, just a mild stretch. So it kind of matches with the rear, but not really because it's the taller tire. Now I've ran a 245/35 and I have a 245/40. The comfort of a 245/40, it's like way better than the 245/35, but the 245/35 tire, which is skinnier, doesn't let me rub or anything like that. Like right now I rub like crazy, and that's because of the plastic liner, which I don't think you can see in this video, but the plastic liner rubs like hell on the tire because of how fat it is. But if I were to run a 245/35, it would be a lot skinnier, and it would definitely not rub at all unless it's like a really, really hard bump, or I fly over a what you call it, a railroad track or something like that. So I did have a 245/35, but the tires were going to shit, so I had these 245/35s laying around, so I threw them on, and it rubs like crazy, and it's annoying when I'm like trying to park and things like that, but I don't really care because it doesn't affect the car, it doesn't damage the car, it just rubs on the fender liner. So I think if I do get another set of tires, I'd probably get a 245/35 again, because it will lower the car like 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch, and I won't hear the rubbing so much. But as of right now, I'm trying to save money, and these tires are good. The tire wear is nice too. I still got like maybe 5, 6, 30 seconds on there. As for the rear, you know, if you're a racer like me, you know, big time racer, burnouts and all, and speeding through traffic and hitting corners, you're gonna have like, what's that? That's probably a 3/32 tire left right there. So I'm gonna need to get a new set of tires. Oh, my brother's home. So I'm gonna get a new set of tires soon, probably by January or maybe February. But in terms of fitment, if you were to get a camber kit to match the front, so it will have like -2° camber all around, I can probably fit a 275/35 or 275/30 back here, no problem. It'll probably still rub like hell, but that extra degree of camber would actually fit the tire a lot better. But as of right now, I like the 255 on there. So that's a 255 on a 10.5 with a mild stretch. Actually, that's a pretty significant stretch. And this is a 275 on a 10.5. We both have the same sets of sizes, so they're both 9.5, 10.5, 22. But he's running a 275/35 in the rear, and that shit is like squared up. So if I were to want to fit that, I gotta camber like -3.5 to make that fit. But at that point, I'll probably use like 60% of the tire, which isn't worth it. You know what I mean? So I'd rather just keep the -1 camber and run a 255 rather than camber in like crazy and use like 60% of my tire on a 275. But that's just my opinion. You could do whatever you want. You can run like you could even run a 8.5, 9.5, 35 offset and run like what, a 255 in the front and like a 275 in the rear and be fine. Me, I just love the aggressive look of the C28s and the T37s because of the concaveness. So I'm deciding to leave it the way it is. It rubs a little bit, but I've had my previous Integra with aggressive ass wheels or meaty tires. I had my TSX 06 TSX. I'll pick a picture here. Many stages of that car, but most aggressive fitment I had on that one was probably 18 by 9.5, 10.5, 22. So I fit that on an Acura TSX, and that shit is ridiculous. And you know, it fit nice. It rubbed nice. I mean, it didn't rub. It ran nice, but it rubbed a little bit. But that shit, I ran a 225/40 tire in the rear on a 10.5, and this is a 255/35. So you can imagine how crazy hella rice stance, hella flush I was back in the day. if I had $1,000 to spend, I definitely refinish these C28s in a different color, give it to my brother, take his wheels, redo that in a different color, and put it on this car. But as in terms of like the finish and the style and the colors of our cars, I love the black on my blue, and I love the red on his black Z. So I love Volk Racing wheels. You know, I'm always gonna buy Volk Racing wheels. Work wheels, they're cool, but they're really heavy, except for the CR Kais. If I could afford the CR Kais as like a spare wheel, I would, but I just don't want it right now. I used to buy wheels all day, every day, back in the day, and that's a little secret about me. Just was obsessed with it. See, I even have like these GTR wheels here. They're bent though, because you can see here they're bent, and I don't think they're repairable, and if they are, they're gonna cost way too much money. So I bought those. I bought a bunch of them, and I sold them recently in that video that you saw, and whatever, you know, any way to make any kind of money if I could. But yeah, now you guys know my wheel and tire specs on my C28s. So tip for all you guys that owns a Lexus or Lexus ISF, just do your research. You know, I know it's quick to just ask a question, but I find that every time I ask a question and people can't get to me, either because they're secretive about their fitment, or they just don't have time to get to it because everyone's busy and stuff, right? Just do your research, and don't be afraid to take risks. Like I said, do your research. I mean, these specs, the 19 by 9.5, 19 by 10.5, 22 offset wheels from Volk Racing was catered to the 350Zs, believe it or not. So that's why there's so many specs of those out there, and you know, Varstones and all these replica companies are copying those specs because, I mean, that's what people are looking for. And surprisingly enough, you can fit it on your cars, no problem, just with a little bit of modification and tire selection. So you can copy my setup if you like. It's not going to be the perfect ride for those who aren't really handsy and afraid to take risks, like I said, because they are quite aggressive, but not too aggressive. So if you want to be conservative, you could just, you know, do what everyone does, 19 by 8.5, 19 by 9.5, or 19 by 9, 19 by 10 with like a 35, 40 offset. Maybe not 40, do a 35. You might be good with 35. You could do that and then run the fat ass tire, like a 245 in the front and do a 275 in the rear, and you have, you know, traction for days. But just do your research. You know, wheel fitment is always the most like complicated thing for a lot of people. People don't understand like the width and offset and tire selection. But I've been doing this for like 5-7 years already, so it's like it comes naturally. I can stare at a rim and a tire in a car and know exactly what it needs. But sorry, it's just a long ass video about talking about random shit. But I figured I'd let you guys know. You know, just an update on like the specifics of the vehicle rather. So that is my current setup, and I hope you guys have better luck with your car as well. And yeah, hope you enjoyed this video. I look forward to seeing you guys on the next one. Peace.